kind of throw out my belief system, which is I think to win a Super Bowl, you have to have seven elite players, generally close to their prime or just out of it. And there are obviously exceptions, but if you go look at the Patriots dynasty, it was like Edelman, Gronk, Tom Brady. They'd have Logan Mankins. There'd be a pass rusher somewhere, one great corner. And they always had like six or seven guys who were really step up big player guys. Now the Ravens teams with Ray Lewis obviously had that. The Chiefs have mostly had that where they have Chris Jones, one elite corner. They almost always have a good safety. Now they've got linebackers, Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes, again, Joe Tooney for a couple of Super Bowls. But it's like at least like 5 to 6 really high-end players. So I
Yeah.
look at Detroit, and I think Detroit, Jameer Gibbs, Amon St. Brown, Hutchison, Penei Sewell, they did lose their center, which I think is a real thing. That hurts. He was an elite center. But
Yeah.
I see about five guys with them who I think they have a young safety we like, right?
Who's that?
But Detroit,
Yeah, Brian Branch, the Alabama kid.
Brian Branch. Yeah, Brian Branch. Um, I I like Green Bay's running back, Josh Jacobs. Jair Alexander, I liked 2 years ago. The receiving core I thought was incredibly promising at the beginning of last year, but now they drafted a receiver in the first round, signaling they don't trust it. Here's my knock on Green Bay. Do they have six elite players? Because that's kind of what wins the Super Bowl. Philadelphia certainly just
I
did.
mean, I think they're very beholden on and predicated on the quarterback playing really well. And 2 years ago down the stretch, he was a top 6, 7 guy in the league the way he played. Last
Yeah.
year, obviously, was really bumpy. So to me, if he's a Pro Bowl guy, he definitely has the physical characteristics. I think the question mark on him coming into the season is very fair. I'm with you on Jacobs. I think Kenny Clark is a excellent player. Xavier McKinney, who they signed from the Giants, was excellent last year. I think their receiving unit. I'm with you. I mean, there were high hopes for a couple of those guys, concussions, injuries. Watson couldn't catch. Now he's got a torn ACL. I think the tight end Tucker is pretty good. So
Musgrave is the other tight end.
yeah, I mean,
He's pretty
they got two
solid.
good tight ends. To me, they are. I'm with you. Like, do they have the Justin Jeffersons and the Micah Parsons and the Fred Warners? I think you could push back on that, and that's more than fair. Coaching staff's pretty damn good. Like, their
Yeah.
talent is good, right? They won 11 games last year and went 1-5, so they are a good team. This is a team sport. That's my pushback always on the NBA. There's more talent than ever. Well, it's not an individual sport; it's a team game. So it's like,
Right.
are the teams that good? And so I think the Packers are probably better as a group than they are individually. Because I'm with you. If you just did like a draft from scratch in the NFC North, their players might not go as high as some of the other players, but you'd go, they've been running circles around the Bears for years. And there's last year, you would have gone into the year, the Bears have all these great players. So it is a team sport. Their head coach is not just the head coach who's proven to be good. He's the play
Yeah.
caller, which is powerful. And I think Jeff Hafley proved to be a pretty damn good hire. I mean, their defense was
Yes.
vastly improved. So I more like the reason when we did the segment last week about picking them to win the division is they won 11 games where the quarterback was banged up and they won one division game. And honestly, they kind of got lucky to win that against the Bears, if you remember. They could have got 0-6. So it's like, that's not going to happen. I would say
Right.
on average, they're going to split, let's say 3-3. And then their culture, I just think that I like their coaching staff. And I'm betting a little on the come on the quarterback, which I could go the other way. But
Right.
I think they have a long history. Even if they goes Montana Young to Jeff Garcia, if this guy's Jeff Garcia was banging out Pro Bowls. Now he's got a while to prove he's even Jeff Garcia, right? He's going to need a big season, to stay healthy. But he got injured in that first game in Brazil, and I just felt like that kind of derailed their whole deal.
Yeah, and I think when you're a young quarterback and you get hurt and you get out of a rhythm,
Yeah,
I don't think it's like a veteran quarterback who comes back. I felt like Jordan Love never got into a rhythm last year. He was gone, then he was back, then he was inconsistent, then he had a couple great game stretch, then he struggled. We don't know if he was 100% healthy. So I do think he's super talented. But you mentioned coaching. So there was an article this week. I think it was maybe Thursday. It was after you'd done Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday shows. SportsIllustrated.com said, now that you've paid Brock Purdy a ton, you're coming off a losing season. let's say Christian McCaffrey gets hurt or Trent Williams, and they're 7-10. They just, I mean, let's face it, McCaffrey is he's the bell cow. He touches it, they're really good. I think Kyle's excellent, and I you can get away with firing a great coach. I mean, Philadelphia's a factory, and they let go of Andy Reid. But I do see something with San Francisco, and I worry about. And I saw this the last 6 or 7 years, or maybe more with New England, and I talked about it a lot on the air. Is that Belichick had too much say in the draft, and they started drafting very poorly. I thought Pete Carroll had a stretch with John Snyder before the last year, I think it was, maybe the last two, where he had too much power. Pete did when Paul Allen died. There was a void, there was a hole in the organization. Snyder almost left, you remember, to Detroit. He wanted the
Yeah.
power back. And then when he got it back, the drafts were great again. And I thought they had the best draft this year in the NFL. So Schneider, and so you see this. You've talked about this. The coach makes the money. And if the coach starts winning Super Bowls or getting to them, he's going to have a say. I think Sean Payton this draft had real say, I could tell. Either John Lynch misses a lot or Shanahan has a little more impact than I'd be comfortable with. I didn't love Pearsall as a pick. I think they've drafted too many receivers. The offensive line drafts picks have been weird. Jake Moody as a kicker, third round, I didn't love. There's a lot of real misses. Is that Shanahan usurping Lynch? He is the most respected, kind of revered guy in the building. What do you make of the Niners' bad drafts?
Well, I think I told you this around the draft time because I had a personnel guy tell me because he was listening to the podcast. He's like, the way we describe it is coaches view drafts like a depth chart. Hey, I'm missing a guard. We need to draft a guard high. I don't have a starting guard. Where front office personnel view it through the lens of over the course of the next 3 or 4 years, how do we build
Yeah.
this team and see big picture? And I think this draft, for the most part, was pretty clear. Kyle, they had some emptiness in their depth chart, right? Because they let half their team go during free agency and with the cut. So when you make 15 to 20 million dollars, and John Lynch, I think, is one of the highest paid, if not the highest paid GM, but relative to coaches, he's not making as much. And Kyle had in his contract the moment that he got hired, he has the final say. Same with Pete. I do think Pete and John over time work together. No different with Kyle and
Yes.
John because they have a high level of respect. But at the end of the day, the coach, when he's in these predicaments like the Niners were in this season because they had to kind of revamp the roster financially, they had a lot of holes. And the first thing you try to do with holes is plug them if you're the coach. So I think this draft, there's going to be a lot of pressure on these last two drafts. And I'm more bullish on the 49ers than everyone else. To me, Kyle Shanahan is going nowhere for the foreseeable future because the
Yeah.
ownership just signed Brock Purdy, and Brock Purdy's tied to Kyle. So they're getting a couple year run. And obviously, if Kyle was let go at the end of this year or the end of next year, regardless how these next couple years, he would be hired immediately. He'd be the number one candidate if he wanted to keep working and would be hired. But people would think about firing their coach, right? So that he's not worried about like he's in one of these spots where unlike a Dayball or a McDaniel or some of these guys that might get fired, they're not guaranteed to get another job immediately. Kyle's guaranteed, right, to get immediate another
Yeah.
job. But I do think, you know, this season is big because the expectations are lower, but everyone's like, look at the schedule. And I know Edelman, the way they talk about Belichick, you never, and I understand it's the NFL, but like their schedule is a lot different than playing the Ravens, the Bills, and the Eagles. I mean, they're playing a lot of the Titans and the Saints. They have no excuse to not win. I think at minimum 9 games. And part of it is when you pay a quarterback, it's the Bucky Brooks tractors and the trailers. Regardless where Purdy is, if you're willing to pay him, you should be very competitive with him as your starting quarterback. I'm hard on Tua, but there is no disputing when Tua plays 16, 17 games, the Dolphins are just going to be a competitive team,
That's
right? So
right.
now, even as they've changed the construct of the roster, I think at minimum anything other than 9 wins if you're the 49ers, based on this schedule, based on investing in the quarterback, would be viewed as a disaster. And I expect because again, it's a coaching league, and I do think Kyle's pretty awesome. And if he wasn't, McVay a couple years ago was really humbled by the experience and came back. And obviously, what they've done the last couple years speaks for itself. Coach Reed, when he was fired, had a big chip on his shoulder, came back. That had to be a pretty humbling year for Kyle at 6-11 with all the money they were spending, the way they lost those games. Now you bring in Robert Saleh, your guy. I think they're going to come with a fury. I think they got a lot to prove, and I'm higher on Purdy than you are, mainly just because of the offense. But I'm with you. If McCaffrey gets injured, their record with and without him speaks for itself. Though they have been very, very open about like he's good, he's in great shape. I know
Yeah.
people have been going to practice and he looks good. Last year was weird. The Achilles weren't working, and then he tears his knee when he finally comes
Yeah.
back. So if he gives them, I don't know, 90% of the season, I think they'd be in pretty. He's a unique player, right?
Oh, I think he is. I think take out Walter Payton and maybe Barry Sanders. I think he's as good a running back as I've ever seen in my life. Now, Adrian Peterson was more forceful and faster, maybe, but he couldn't catch. He had a fumble issue. I think McCaffrey, Walter Payton was stronger than Barry Sanders. Barry was shifty. Walter was shifty and incredibly pound for pound. I mean, Walter Payton's one of those, could have been the strongest guy in league history, pound for pound. He was
Yeah.
incredible. You couldn't tackle him one on one. Linebackers couldn't. So, but I think McCaffrey is in that class. I think he's a remarkable player.